We have multiple huge leagues updates to go over today as we are now just one day away from the regular season. We have some moves that are being made, some updates, and folks, something strange is going on surrounding one player that we've been talking about all summer long. We're going to break down exactly what's happening, break down the latest updates ahead of what's going to be a very exciting season opener for the Toronto Maple Leafs in about a little bit over 24 hours from now. But before we get into it all, if you're a part of that percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, place to be for daily Leafs content is right here. We're going to be going live after every single game. So if that sounds like something you want to watch, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Your ass sports with Unbelievable Darius. More moves are happening for the Toronto Maple Leafs. More updates are being brought to us. And yesterday was a crazy day. We obviously had 3 videos covering all the moves, but things have started to not necessarily settle down, but I think stabilize is the word that I'll use. But there is still something weird going on here with Easton Cowan that we'll dive into later. But Darius, we have the lines officially for today, the day before the game. So these are the lines that matter probably the most here. Nyes, Matthews, Michelli, McMahon, Tavares, Nylander, Joshua, Domi, Robertson, Lorentz, Nicola Waugh, and Calle Yarncroke with Sammy Blais as the extra. So this seems to be the lineup they're going to rock into tomorrow. We will obviously have that confirmed in tomorrow's morning skate. But Darius, this is interesting here because of Easton Cowan, because of a lot of things. He still hasn't been sent down. But I want to get your thoughts on this. We covered it yesterday, but this seems to be the line that they're rocking. And Easton Cowan and Jacob Quillen are both not on the ice as practice begins here. So a little bit interesting here, and things are starting to become clearer and clearer, but also some things are still pretty foggy.
Yeah, and Jacob Quillen and Easton Cowan weren't on the ice with the main group. They were on the ice practicing, doing drills together on another pad. So they haven't officially been sent. And Jacob Quillen, actually, which is weird, made the team. If you look at the roster from yesterday at 5 p.m., Easton Cowan hasn't been sent back down to the Marlies. He has not been reassigned yet. So there could be something in the works here for tomorrow where he could find his way back into the lineup. But a quote from Treliving, which we'll get to in a second, makes me believe that, yes, he is probably going back down to the Marlies, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you look at the lineup, let's focus on this for a second. We'll get to Cowan in a few minutes, so stay tuned for that. Robertson's in there, right? This is kind of what we were looking at yesterday, and this looks like what they're going to be rocking. I think something that's interesting is Sammy Blais, he had a really good year in the AHL. Maybe he could be making his way back to the AHL at this point. He has won a Stanley Cup with Craig Berube. I understand why they claimed him. Maybe he does stick around with the team, but I think they're going to be doing some weird cap stuff over the course of the next week to try and get the guys that they want on the team up from the Marlies and vice versa, right? So they were just trying to, buy themselves some time, do some cap shenanigans, all that stuff. And that's why they, submitted that roster and why they did that at 5 p.m. yesterday, because everyone needed to around the league. But then obviously now that the season's starting tonight, you can do some weird stuff, right? So you can start making moves again. So we'll see how that kind of plays out heading into tomorrow. But ultimately, we can get into what, Treliving and Berube are saying about it. I think that, he might actually be ending up on the Marlies because things in the NHL change very quickly. I don't know if they saw them claiming Primo and Blais off waivers 2 days ago. So things do change very quickly. So, it's not that he had a bad preseason. He had a great one. Easton Cowan, this is, and he probably deserves to be on the team. And, he brings that youth, that energy to the lineup. But I think at the end of the day, he might actually be ending up on the Marlies to start. We'll see him at some point this season in the NHL, surely. But he might end up on the Marlies, I think, to start.
Yeah, and obviously, again, you can see here they're doing a skills session on another pad, and Treliving spoke out, and he said he's on the roster, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. Easton has had a very good camp. He's right there ready to play for us. We want to manage it appropriately. If he's going to be playing with us here, great. But if not, I want him playing. So, this kind of screams down to the AHL for Easton Cowan. But this is why, not necessarily, surprising, but something strange is going on in the sense of they have so many players, so many extras, and they claim Sammy Blais. Of course, Primo was a great move. At least we'll see how he does. But I think that's a really, low risk, high upside move here. Jacob Quillen as well, he's probably also going to get sent down. There's just a lot of weird things going on. You can even point to the Joseph Wall. There's a lot of things happening. But like you mentioned, this is most likely going to be the line heading into tomorrow's game. And of course, the regular season for the NHL starts tonight. I don't expect that they, change too much from here or, differ too much. I don't think they thought they were going to get Sammy Blais either. I don't think that was something they were going to be figured they do. Same thing with Caden Primo. The exact same thing. I don't know if they signed James Reimer, if they thought they would have got Caden Primo, because of course, at the end of the day, they just released Reimer. Now, he also didn't help himself in that preseason game where he gave up the lead and had a pretty, rough third period. But for Cowan, I want to get your thoughts. Are you pretty convinced now he's going to start the year with the Marlies? I would assume that's the way that things are. I mean, it is the way things are trending. That's what Treliving's comments have said. But I can't help but think it was a weird way, not necessarily a bad way, but just from my perspective, a weird way to handle the situation, having this much uncertainty 24 hours away from the regular season starting for the Leafs. I figured this was going to be kind of figured out a lot sooner. But at the end of the day, it seems as if they're really taking it to the last minute here, especially with a lot of the other players on the roster getting fighting for playing time, whether that be Yarncroke, Nick Robertson. I mean, we look at a week ago, neither of those two were in the practice lineups for the preseason game. So very interesting and an interesting way to handle it.
Yeah, and you brought up Joseph Will and the goaltending. We have an update on that as well, so stay tuned for that in a couple of minutes. We'll get to that update from Brad Treliving. But in terms of Easton Cowan, they could still make it work. He can come back up if they really wanted to make that work tomorrow. But the thing is, I think there's some pretty big implications on the cap moving forward if they were to do that, right? I'm sure they want Michael Pezzetta back on the team. So they're looking at that and the long-term implications of how much deadline space are we going to have and how, all of that. They could use LTIR space as well now that the season is starting because they have a couple guys like Rafai who broke their hand, right? So they could do a couple things like that today. We'll see what ends up ultimately happening. But I think, some of the language that's being used is kind of what I've been saying the last couple of weeks, where it's a fun story to have Easton Cowan on the fourth line and have him make the NHL and, he play the first game against the Montreal Canadiens. Like, that's awesome. And feel good story and everyone would love that, right? But long term and over the course of a season, he couldn't stay on the fourth line. That's bad for his development. So ultimately, if he's not going to play, if he's going to be an extra, all of those things, send him down to the Marlies, have him play on the top line, get him touches, play on the power play, all of these things. And then, continue his development with the Marlies. And we'll see him at some point. Maybe call him up. He can play some minutes with the Leafs and stuff like that here and there throughout the season. But get him continuing to do what he does at the pro level so he can be that player for the Toronto Maple Leafs in a couple years. So that's just the way I see it. That's some of the language that's being used. We'll see what ultimately happens because I think they would like to get him in there just for a game. That would be fun. But, ultimately, we'll see what happens in 24 hours.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. On Joseph Wall, the update is that there's no update. He's doing well and he's progressing, but there's no update in the exact time frame for him coming back to the team. So the good news is he's doing well and progressing. Again, we're not even clear if we don't think it's an injury thing. They said personal matters, so I'm not gonna speculate. There's no point of doing so, but we'll update you guys as soon as something else comes out. The fact that there's no update a day before, we kind of alluded to it when it first happened. This is going to be a while, and maybe Caden Primo runs away with the backup job so they can give Wall even more time to, because he's going to have a full camp now. He didn't really get into much action at all, so that's going to be interesting there. Something else regarding moves here, you can see Treliving cites 3 back-to-backs in October that will more than likely require Myers to fortify the blue line or a Marley defenseman. So that's something else to keep in mind here. They do have 3 back-to-backs this month, which is, wild actually that you think about it. But that also lends, credit to the fact that, maybe we see Cowan in one of those. We'll obviously see the lines change up. I don't think these are the solidified lines for the entire month, and this never is. But then maybe that's why they have someone like Sammy Blais. There's just so many moving pieces here. Power play units remain the same. But Darius, the good news is hockey is back, and we will be seeing these guys play tomorrow against the Montreal Canadiens, and hopefully in different fate than last year's season opener when they got shut out. But let us know down below what your thoughts are on Treliving's comments, on Easton Cowan. Weird things going on across the Leafs, but it'll all make sense come tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.